What a fun way to start a week. Hello YouTubers, this is the noobifier. I have been testing and reviewing more driving sim products in an attempt to get a first-person experience with various options. I do this so that all of my opinions and recommendations aren't just based on what I read or see on the internet. Cammus really impressed me with their stripped-down approach when I tested their 50N wheelbase, and I've also been testing the LC8, an unusual triangle-shaped 8Nm base on a budget. If you place value on performance and simplicity, the 15N base still gets a solid recommendation from me even after almost 1 year of owning it. My impressions remain the same as I outlined in the review video, and that's linked up for you right now. Naturally, having that focus on value and budget, Cammus would work towards something to address more of the market segment. As I said, they have the LC8 to address the higher entry level, but for today's product, they've really thought outside the box. They approached the problem by putting it on its side and came up with something that nobody else has even thought about. Just like the business idea of cutting the middleman out, Cammus cut the hub out. A really gutsy move. You should know that if you're looking at SimGear, Cammus is officially PC only. There are ways reported on Reddit to just brute force the C5 to work with consoles. I didn't test any of these workarounds, and my personal recommendation is still that if you want something for consoles, go invest in something that's designed specifically for consoles. You can always use it on PC later. And for absolute transparency, it's also important for me to mention that during 12 hours of initial testing the early prototype C5, that it disconnected twice, needing a game restart. And after discussing this with Cammus and even reaching out to Will at Boosted Media, it was deemed to be an isolated situation. It wasn't overheating, the firmware is up to date, the wires were swapped out and isolated from movement. Cammus replaced my C5 with a production version, and that unit has a further 16 hours of use and it has 0 issues. Reactive customer support, a quick RMA as I would expect. We continue. In this entry market, we have the trusted products such as the G923, the T248, and others. It's a very popular segment offering that sweet spot for those who just want to play and might not want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Many entry-level bases still rely on that older design of a motor driving a belt through a gearbox. These get the job done, but this is a legacy approach. It has more moving parts, it has louder operation, perhaps muddy or muted feedback, and they tend to be lower torque capable. This is why there's a massive shift towards direct drive, with better overall performance and fewer moving parts. Fanatec was really the first to bring direct drive to the mainstream with their DD1, DD2, and later with the CSL-DD. Fast forward a couple years, and today, us sim drivers find ourselves with more direct drive options from Logitech, Thrustmaster, Asetek, Moza, and even less expensive versions of boutique brands. The C5 is $250 for just the wheel, but that actually turns out to be everything you need. I think that has to be some kind of record for the direct drive point of entry. You would still need a part to mount it to the desk or a sim platform. The desk mount is $30, and there is a bundle which is $300 that includes the CP5 pedals. So, for a total price of $330, you get a direct drive wheel, a mount, plus a basic set of Cammus pedals. The complete package. I can't personally tell you if the pedals are good because I haven't tested them and I haven't seen them, but at that price I would expect that they would be fine. Right? As I said, I didn't test them, but they seem comparable to the Moza SPL Lite or even those entry-level pedals from Fanatec. Don't expect it to have a load cell, and you won't be disappointed. You can always substitute the bundled pedals for the LC100 if you're interested in future-proofing your system a little bit, and if you feel that a clutch is required. These LC pedals are also being tested, and they're also proving to be quite the value. Fanatec just dropped the price of the CSL-DD 5N bundle to $400 because with some of the new releases, they really didn't have a choice. $400 is also the price for the Moza R3 bundle, which I've also reviewed. For $323, you can also pick up the G923 from Logitech. I see what you did there, Logi. And that's where many of us start. It has console support, but it's based on an older design, so I did test it and it's a perfectly good value. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what most people would normally recommend to those who'd be starting out, but I do read more and more often where people ask for beginners' recommendations. We're getting more people recommending something than those usual two from Logitech and Thrustmaster. Recommendations are shifting towards these direct drive budget wheels. Shipping to my door was a boxed box with a thick foam insert. There should be no way that any part of this would become physically damaged even if the FedEx driver was having a horrible day. The unit is shockingly heavy at just over 3 kilograms. Asking someone to pick it up for the first time is actually quite funny. It does, after all, just look like a wheel when sitting flat on a table. The desk mount is a required part that also offers a couple degrees of tilt, and it can hold the small external fan, which proved to be required instead of just an extra. The wheel unit is so small that they needed to mount the fan externally. A unique idea to tuck it away inside the mount. My studio's in a basement, it's usually cold, and I tested it with the fan disconnected in normal driving with no issues. But switching to drift or rally requires a little bit of help from that fan, and that's to be expected. Aesthetically and visually, the C5 looks and feels great. It's surely unique. It really stands out. The wheel rim is a little bit on the smaller side, measuring in at 280mm with a flat bottom. The gap between the rim and the hub is large enough for larger hands, and this smaller wheel size really does help to overcome that 5 Nm rating and make it feel stronger. It's nicely wrapped in pea leather with nice detail in the stitching, and it's comfortable. Nothing's interchangeable, meaning your upgrade path is really just a full replacement when you're ready. There are plenty of buttons, a basic 10-segment shifter, and a 3-segment speed readout, which illuminates in this really nice blue. A carbon face, machine edges, black controls, and a fully metal frame. The shift paddles are super tiny and a little bit out of the way. I was initially disappointed, and I don't understand why that was done. I did get used to them. At least they're never going to be in the way if you decide to drift with this wheel. If you're doing some serious hand-over-hand driving, it's very easy to loose the shifters for a couple seconds. And it really boggled my mind because, Cammus, how hard would it have been to put a little bit more effort into making this tunable? Perhaps with some variations in the shifter paddles and some spacers. On the wheel, you end up with 3 rotating dials for ABS, brake balance, traction control, or engine map. You have a pair of 4-button D-pad styles for managing the menus, MFDs, or view. You have a further 8 buttons placed in pairs around the wheel, and 4 in a cluster near the middle. On the rear I/O, there's a port for power. There's a USB Type-B, which is the one that's used for printers. This USB plug is legacy, however, it's very common and very difficult to damage. The included external fan has its own small plug, and there's a pair of Type-C ports for expansion, an unexpected luxury feature on a bare budget product. Near the top is a reset power button and a power LED. You have a compact external power brick that strikes me as being more than capable to run a 5 Nm wheel. I don't find anything specifically ugly about the C5. It's quite nice looking, and because it's limited to 5 newtons, I never felt the need to run it below its full capacity. It was never set below 100% force. Like the Moza R3, I was able to get good texture and a nice road feel out of it. Throughout testing, I never felt the need to tune anything or use the extra adjustment. Despite being able to adjust many aspects of its performance, I drove on the default settings. Changing between game types and car types does result in a noticeable change in your experience. The tire grip, and then the feeling of that grip fading. The grip loss translated quite well, and I must say that compared to the legacy belt drive offerings that are still available, the C5 operated silently. The clicky shifters make no extra noise, which is great if you're in an apartment with headphones. Nobody living with or near you will be subjected to hours of clicky-clacky shifting. And as you would expect, everyone who comes to visit gets a chance to test the newest gear that I happen to be testing at that time. Without telling people what the cost was, each came to the same conclusion. They used it for some laps, and overall, most really liked it. The only real feedback was the tiny shifters, and then I would ask them the real question: how much do you think this costs? Of the 6 people asked, nobody said a number below $375, and one said that they thought it was closer to $500. I agree. Having become accustomed to more powerful basses, I was happy with the feeling, and this really is perfect for a dorm, apartment, or as I said, on a budget. It has plenty of force, but nothing that would prevent it from being mounted to a modest table. It worked very well mounted to the full 5-DOF system, and it just felt like a smaller wheel with the settings on a lower force setting. So Cammus is quite interesting because the C5 offers a no-frill deal, but there are still some unexpected frills. You don't really give up any features as they're still mostly there. They have a mobile app that controls their software for tuning. The software has all of the things that you would expect. It's just a little bit less refined than some others. I found it initially difficult to navigate their website, but this has improved lately, and they've also addressed some tiny issues, but where the rubber meets the road, this C5 performs very well. Both the C5 and R3 mostly wreck the G923 for value. In my opinion, the C5 mostly holds its own against CSLDD No Boost, but the CSLDD is a little bit more refined, and it does offer a QR release and an optional power boost upgrade. If you're on a budget and don't mind being limited to this one wheel, then yeah, it's quite unique, quite a great value, and a new benchmark for entry level. The software automatically sees when you add more Cammus devices, which means if you remain in their ecosystem, everything's in one place in one piece of software. Direct drive offers so many advantages over belt drive, and these used to be expensive. Cammus has produced greatness on a budget, again, and I'm happy to recommend it to anyone who's just starting out. And of course, if you want to build out a simple second rig for a kid or for when friends are over, this would be a great start. The C5 makes sense for the PC player just starting out, especially if you're unsure how much you're going to like to sim. The C5 can be seen as a great, cheap upgrade over the G923, but then if you can afford it, there's also other options a little bit more expensive like the R9 and of course the Cammus 15 Newton, which is just a little bit more. If you plan to buy, I would suggest you not bothering to buy from a local distributor. My order traveled halfway around the world and it was to my door in 4 days. The company often lists sales 40 or 50% off. And if you use my link and promo code, you're going to get a further 5% when ordering directly from the manufacturer. This turns out to be even cheaper than buying it from anywhere else, and often my Cammus orders make it to my door without any extra COD. And I feel this is all I need to say about the Cammus C5. Definitely worth checking out. Thank you for spending your time with me. Please post your comments or questions in the section below. I love to read and answer. Drive safe.